This last year has been bad for businesses, particularly small businesses in the state of New York. Approximately 99% of all businesses in the state of New York are small businesses. Of those that are deemed small businesses, 80% of them have less than 10 employees. Everywhere across the state of New York, we see empty storefronts, shops for sale, closed up. We need to find a way to get businesses back, and we need to find a way for new businesses to form in the state of New York. New York is terrible for small business. It's hard to do business. It's hard to get set up. It's hard to navigate all the regulatory complexity. So now it's important to realize that there are several entities that a business can choose when determining how to set up its company. Corporations, limited liability companies, limited partnerships. They can not even set up an entity and just be a sole proprietorship. But generally speaking, most small businesses will choose to be a limited liability company. It offers a little bit of flexibility in terms of how the company is structured, but still gives the limited liability protection that traditionally corporations reserve. So now there's something happening right now that can greatly help all new limited liability companies in the state of New York. Let me show you. Okay, so there's this thing in New York called the LLC publishing requirement. And what that is there's a process that needs to happen within 120 days after initially filing an LLC's articles of organization. So within 120 days, the new company, the LLC, has to publish within 2 newspapers in their local county and where their offices are located. A notice stating that the company is forming, some basic information, or just filing their articles of organization and publishing that in those newspapers. After publishing those, they get an affidavit back from the newspapers, and then they have to refile with the state of New York another $50 to actually make that filing. And then after that, they should be all set to go. They're now a new business. So depending on where you are, what county you're in New York, it can be anywhere from $50 to $100 to publish per newspaper, or if you're downstate, it can be as much as several $100s to $1,000+ per newspaper to publish this. Additionally, the county clerk in each county is the one who is responsible for administering and organizing these publishing requirements per county. So everyone's different. Some counties are very, very easy to work with, kind of a directory of newspapers to go to. They tell you who you can go to. You go inquire how to satisfy your requirement with the newspaper or the other publisher. However, there are also counties like, calling you out, Queens County, who it's kind of a very opaque process where you are just given 2 newspapers based upon a random list, or actually I don't even know. But essentially you are assigned 2 newspapers. You don't know what their pricing is. You don't know what the pricing of the newspapers that weren't given to you. You're just told, here are your newspapers, go pay the fee, no ands, ifs, or buts about it. The more frustrating part about all this is the Secretary of State actually maintains a directory where anyone can go and search for companies, organizations to find out their address, their company address, who their registered agent is, if they have one, and just more basic information. It's also important to think about why these laws exist in the first place. So in 1994, when these laws were initially passed, LLCs weren't that old. So LLCs essentially were created in the 80s to be this kind of flexible process that aren't quite as complicated as corporation, but they have more protections than just starting to sell something on your own as a sole proprietor. And there was a concern, or there was some voiced concern that they wanted to make sure that LLCs, it was easy for people in the communities in which they did business to know who owned the company, where they did business, where they're located at, and etc. So they made this newspaper requirement. All right, that all makes sense. However, this is in 1994, so AOL was just getting off the ground. No one knew what the internet was going to be. But then within several years, it was already redundant. So essentially, the purpose for which these laws were created they no longer serve the public good. Now they're just added expenses and added bureaucracy for no added benefit to the public. This isn't helping anyone. It's not clear, at least anything that I've found, that many people say that this is where they find information on companies, and this provides them a valuable and necessary public good. So then why, if this law seems, at least from what I've been telling you, relatively intuitive for why it shouldn't exist anymore, why does it still persist? And the answer is actually pretty simple. I'm sure you know, it's politics. It's essentially, this law persists because of lobbying and special interests. I'm not going to say names. I can't substantiate exactly who is advocating for this. From what I've understood from going to several legal seminars on this, as well as just kind of hearing through the business community in New York, everyone has seemed to congregating on there's a certain lobbying group and a certain special interest that every time a law comes up to repeal the publishing requirements, here comes these groups to make sure that these laws are on the books. So why is that? Well, there are certain entities that essentially make money off of these filings and would like to see them persist. But that's not good enough anymore. This law is, by and large, very bad for small business. New York is now one of only 3 remaining states that still have a publication requirement. So we're in the good company of 3 states that make it harder to do business and harder for small businesses to start. We just have this rigmarole of all this extra process, all this extra money, all these extra fees for nothing. We're not serving the public good anymore. So good news, bad news. The good news is the bill in the New York Assembly and the New York Senate to repeal the LLC publication requirement, the New York Limited Liability Partners publication requirement, and to update the system, the directory, the website that you can go and find this information on these companies. If we want to make sure that these laws are off the books for good, we have to let our elected officials know that we want them to support and ultimately vote to repeal these laws. To do that, we need to put our finger on the scale and let our elected officials know. We need to very much tell them that we expect them to advocate for and vote to repeal these laws. So how do we do that? So below is a form you can use to find out who your elected officials are if you don't know, or if you do, provide that information and get a document where you can find the contact information of your elected officials, so your assembly representative and your senator, as well as some sample language you can use to email, to write, to call your elected officials to let them know that you want to see these laws repealed once and for all. You want the New York LLC publishing requirement off the books. You want to help them, you want to help small businesses, and you want to make it easier to do business in New York. So thanks for listening in. Please fill out the form. Please contact your representative or share this video so we can spread this as far as we can. Like I said, we need as many voices as we can to make sure that once and for all, this law is off the books and we can help support small business.